We are here today to celebrate the winners of the second annual Development Impact Awards, Real Humanitarian, Tearfund, and UNICEF Canada. These awards recognize and honor projects that align with at least one of the six core action areas of the Feminist International Assistance Policy, or FIAP. As you see, in this slide, these are the six action areas. These the action areas that have brought about a meaningful change in communities. Today's all three award-winning projects are working in the area of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. On February 4th, at a special event at the Manitoba Legislative Assembly, Real Humanitarian, UNICEF Canada, and Tearfund received their awards in front of their peers, elected officials, and the public.
It was a great day to celebrate all of the award winners there. And so, let's dive in. Let's start the conversation. First, we're going to hear from Real Humanitarian, and then we're going to move into a discussion with all the winners about some of their learnings from this work. I'd now like to welcome co-executive directors of Real Humanitarian, Deborah Northcott and Rachel Austin.
Hello, thank you so much. Welcome. I'm Rachel Austin. This is Deb Northcott. We are the co-executive directors of Real Humanitarian. We were so excited to receive this award for our work with SSCM, the vocational training school in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So I'd love to tell you a little bit about the program. We've been working with SSCM for many years. It is a free trade school in the center of Addis Ababa, and many of the students who are enrolled there are women. The program was originally created after a local NGO, SSCM, took a look at the needs in the area, in their community, and saw that there was a great need for trades training to help people improve their quality of life and their potential for income. The project does target girls and women-headed households specifically, which is why so many of the students are women who go to the school. Each of the students receives everything they need as part of their enrollment to be able to succeed in their training. The training courses are from 6 to 9 months. They include in-class training and also a practicum or an apprenticeship placement, so they can get some real work experience. At the end of the program, they take a national exam so that they have a nationally certified and recognized certificate in their trade of choice so that they're able to get work. So the different trade programs at this school, you can see here, hairdressing is a very popular one of the programs, but we have barbering and hairdressing, so men's and women's hair care. You can see here one of the classes as they're learning how to do men's hair care. At the end of each of the graduation classes, the students are given a gift of tools to take with them to be able to do their trade in future. Electricity is not particularly plentiful in Ethiopia, and so the tools they receive are quite often non-electricity dependent. So you'll see these curling irons. They're old-fashioned. You warm them up on a stove because that's something you can have. We also have a furniture making program where they can build tables, chairs, desks, ironing boards, many different things. A garment making program. This is a new industry in Ethiopia that's growing rapidly, the textile industry, and it's one of our most popular classes. They learn all different parts of garment making, from learning how to use the machines to being able to make their own patterns and work with different types of fabrics. Before enrollment in a program, students are typically making below 2,500 birr a month, which is less than $45 a month Canadian. It's not very much. When they receive their certification and they're able to get jobs, this improves their monthly income to at least 8,000 birr per month, which is a vast improvement over what they've done, what they were able to make beforehand. We love being able to go to the graduation ceremonies of our students and help give them their tools and celebrate with them. There's always much excitement as they're working, going out into the workforce. Quite often, by the time they reach graduation, many of them have found job placements and are excited to share with us where they're working and how that's going to impact their lives.
So I just wanted to share with you my experience of being at the graduation in November. At that time, there were 80 students that were graduating from all of those different trades, and they were given an opportunity to share with us how things had gone for them. And a couple of stories that I wanted to share. First of all, one of the women that had been doing the hairdressing said that the classes are half a day, and after her placement practicum training, that hairdressing salon liked her so much they invited her to come and work with them on the other half of the day that she was not yet finishing her schooling. And so she started doing that, and she had been able to earn between what they paid her and her tips 4,000 birr a month, which she thought was a phenomenal amount. And there you could hear everybody cheering a little bit in the crowd for her. And then she announced very proudly that now that she had graduated, they had offered her full-time work, and they were starting her wages at 8,000 birr per month. And then she would have her tips and stuff on top of that. And the whole class erupted in cheers, and we're excited for her. Many of the students are coming from situations where they have had their schooling interrupted, either because they've come from an area where there was civil unrest, or they just have not been able to afford to continue going beyond grade 6 or 7. And so many of them have moved on in their life. They're married and have a family as they're coming back to looking at how they need to support, because they're now either on their own or their family is in such dire straits that they need 2 income earners. And so one woman that was there talked about how her husband had been ill for a long time, and they finally decided that she needed to go and get some training because the selling small petty trade that she'd been doing just wasn't enough. And so she took the hairdressing course, and about 2/3 of the way through her hairdressing course, her husband passed away. And this was a real a huge change in her life, and the whole group rallied around her. All the other students and the staff at the center rallied around her, helped support her so that she could finish, and also gave her some tremendous positive reinforcement that she had completed her national exam and graduated, and was now, as a single parent, being able to go into the workforce and looking that she would be able to actually support her children on her own and with their family on her own. These are just 2 small examples of how this training changes people's lives. And having worked with this organization as a partner for the past 10 to 12 years, it is wonderful to see the changes that happen in people's lives, particularly women, as they look at how they can fully contribute to their family and their community and have dignity in their job and hold their head up in the community as someone who has something to offer and can look after their own needs. So thank you for letting us share about this wonderful program.
Thank you for sharing this incredible project. I'd like to invite all our guests today to turn on their cameras as we move to a discussion about kind of some best practices and lessons learned. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to introduce some of these folks a little bit better, more clearly later on, some of our other award winners here today. So these 3 projects that won the award this year, although they're in different countries, they're all focused on empowering women and girls and on gender equality. I'm wondering if you could share one lesson learned that others could learn from, or any best practices. And I think maybe we'll go to Real Humanitarian first, since we just heard about your project. So I'll throw it to you guys first.
So one of the things that is a practical learning for perhaps from this, as is typical in many African countries right now, there is a lot of insecurity, job insecurity, the workplace, the economy is changing all the time. Sometimes their currency is losing value in the global markets, and so what they used to be able to buy, they can no longer buy. So one of the successes or positives of this trade school scholarship that women receive as they go through and are able to take this trade training is that despite those changes and the higher costs for raw materials, for instance, in the garment making, a cost of a sewing machine to actually get practical experience on how to use it, and then buying the raw material like fabric and the things you need to have in order to make a pattern, the students wouldn't be able to afford that. And so if they were somewhere else, their training would come to a halt because they just couldn't afford the raw materials. So the success of that training having those materials paid for and having the tools there that they can readily use, they're guaranteed to have that experience to get full training that they need as they go through. So that's one of the lessons for us that we learned, that how critical it is to be able to provide all of those supplies and materials to make sure that they can actually get the practical experience that they need. One of the challenges that we have looked at in supplementing is that more and more women are coming to us with trauma or other issues from their past, and that can sometimes interfere with the learning process. And so we have brought in more fully social workers on site, and the opportunity for women to have a place where they can go and discuss some of the issues that they're facing either at home or have faced in the past, so that they can work through those things, make sense of their history or make sense of what's going on in their life, and have it not side rail them from their education process so they can't finish or complete. So that has been one of the challenges that we saw occurring, and a response that we had to help mitigate that for women, so that they were, you know, just trying to remove some of those hurdles out of the way so that they can actually finish this process and have that reward at the end of being able to do their jobs. So yeah, thank you.
It's really a valuable thing to take away from today, that it's not just the training, but wraparound supports too, right? So that's really excellent. Thanks for sharing. Maybe I'll throw it to UNICEF or Tearfund. Does anybody else have a response to that question about lessons learned or best practices? Maybe let's try UNICEF. So today we have Samantha from UNICEF Canada and Rhoda from UNICEF Canada.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to defer to Rhoda for this answer.
Let me just start by bringing you warm greetings from the UNICEF Ghana family, as well as the over 29,000 learners and 900 teachers and over 15,000 community members that the Undaunted Women Project was able to touch their lives. In fact, this is a very important event for us, because it's an event that celebrates impact on the lives of vulnerable people in Ghana, especially girls. So we are very excited to join today. As part of the project implementation, one of the key lessons that we learned was about co-creation. Within the disabilities fraternity, and let me bring this in, they have a saying that nothing about us without us. And it means that when you are designing programs, when you are developing interventions, you need to include the beneficiaries, because it helps them to bring out the issues, to dialogue the solutions. And at the end of the day, you're able to see the ownership, they having the ownership, and also you sustaining the gains. What we did for the Undaunted Women Supporter Program was that from the beginning of the project implementation, there was a co-creation that involved community members, parents, traditional leaders, religious leaders, the adolescent girls themselves, and boys who we also know have to support them in terms of staying in school, completing their lower secondary, and transitioning to higher levels of education. In fact, the benefits of that co-creation ranges from the community owning the program, supporting its implementation, and sustaining the gains. One of the key issues that came out during the co-creation was on how do we see our girls going into male-dominated areas like science, going to study science programs, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so one of the key activities that was implemented on was how do you train teachers to be responsive to the needs of girls within these male-dominated areas? And I must say that at the end of the project, 33% of 1,000 vulnerable girls who were identified have completed lower secondary and are now pursuing science-related programs at higher levels of education. And we want to see more Ghanaian girls going into this area. And it is through the co-creation where some of these issues came up and solutions were identified to support them. Another critical area I also want to mention was the parental support for young mothers who had to return to school because they had given birth, but through the intervention, there was opportunity for these girls to go back. But the parents were there to take on their babies, to care for them so that these girls could go back to school, focus on their studies, break that poverty cycle, be able to earn something for themselves and to take care of their babies. So these are the two critical lessons that we have learned in Ghana here, and we really appreciate the support from Undaunted Women through this initiative.
Thanks very much. So that idea of co-creation, community involvement, and as you said, nothing about us without us. I think that's a key message for everyone at every time to take that on board. Thank you for sharing that. I wonder now if we could go to Tearfund. Today we have with us Trisha Okenge from Tearfund Canada and Joseph Muniwoki from Fadhili Trust in Kenya. So I'll throw it to you two to answer this question.
I'll pass the question over to Josephine, but I just did want to jump in and give my comments. It was really lovely to hear from Deb and Rachel about the success of their project. I sent a little heart emoji when they were talking about the support that came in when one particular woman had a really critical event happen within their family. And I think that that's one of the lessons learned. It wasn't the lesson learned that I had intended to share. I'll let Josephine do that. But, you know, creating environments that are supportive for women. Rhoda mentioned also bringing the parents on board as an environment that's supportive for women. Those are things that I took from both Rachel and Deb's presentation as well as Rhoda. So over to Josephine now to share a little bit about lessons learned from our project.
Greetings to all of you from Fadhili Trust in Kenya. The Women Empowerment Project that we have uses the Village Savings and Loans model. To date, we have reached over 46,000 women, and some of the lessons we have learned include what we call self-selection. When you allow the women to self-select and form groups on their own without interference, then they are likely to own the group. They are likely to even last longer than if you point out who should belong where. A second lesson we have also learned is ensuring that the groups are autonomous through registering them with the local government offices so that they are not associated with Fadhili per se. They know we do not own them from the get-go. So that way we are assured that they'll outlast us. They'll last longer than our presence in that community. Something else is about our being very intentional in making sure that the leaders have 2/3 of women. It is embedded in their constitution that at least 2/3 of the women in the group should be in leadership, you know. What we are saying here is, it's not like we are not promoting men, but if we allow the men to dominate the groups, then it stops being a women-led process. It becomes a men-led process. Thank you. For now, I will share just those three. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Josephine. That's some interesting ideas about self-selection and autonomy for the women participating in the programs, and also some structural insights, right? If you set it up with a constitutional requirement to have women, you'll have women. So I think that's a great point. Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for participating in our first discussion. Now we're going to move into a presentation from Tearfund Canada, Trisha Okenge, the CEO of Tearfund Canada, and Josephine Muniwoki, Executive Director of Fadhili Trust, sharing about their work together in Kenya that you've just heard a little bit about. We're going to dive into some of the details now. So turn it over to Trisha. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. It really is an honor to be here presenting our project. I say our project, actually Fadhili Trust is implementing the project in Kenya. One of the things that I would like to highlight about Tearfund Canada is that we work exclusively through local partners in our countries of operation. And that's done very intentionally in order to build sustainability and leadership. We talk about a localization agenda, and Tearfund Canada has been operating within a localization framework for well over 35 years now. I will hand it over to Josephine, who has she's prepared a video that will share much more about this specific project. Thank you.
Fadhili Trust was founded in 2001, and we exist to build the capacity of rural communities for sustainable development. Currently, we are working in the area of women empowerment, where we are implementing a project called Village Savings and Loans Associations. We are also involved with church work in the area of transformation, and we have a program called Church and Community Transformation. We are also involved in climate change activities under the project that we call Nature Plus. We are also currently implementing activities under food security. The area where we work is challenged in matters food security. It is an area where the community practices rain-fed agriculture, and the fact that it does not rain as expected, sometimes they go for 4 years even without enough rain. It has become necessary then to think of alternative ways of getting livelihood other than just rain-fed agriculture. As a result, programs like the Women Empowerment Program have come in handy, because then they are taught about alternative livelihood sources, including starting of businesses, even having activities like beekeeping, like poultry farming, and many others. We are also involved in the area of education support for children from challenged backgrounds, and to date, we have seen over 150 children go through education. The Women Empowerment Project, which we are implementing in partnership with Tearfund Canada under support from MCIC, has reached over 46,000 women. This program is modeled on the Village Savings and Loans Association. The VSL program starts with sensitization of communities on the need to join such groups, after which women are given a chance to do self-selection. They are given a period during which they are able to select each other and group themselves into groups of 18 up to 30 members. And once they do that, they call on us as Fadhili Trust through our field officers, and then we are able to offer training. The kind of training we do takes 9 to 12 months. Once that is done, we graduate the women to become independent of us, so that then we can achieve sustainability. And so this project operates in either 9 or 12-month cycles. During the 9 months or 12 months, the women are able to save in weekly meetings. They decide on how much to save. And many times they are informed by the economic level of the lowest person amongst them. And so most groups will start with 50 shillings per share, which is an equivalent of $50, and they can buy as much as 5 shares per meeting. None of them is allowed to buy beyond 5 shares. And so that goes on for 1 month. Then after 1 month, they are at a position now to start issuing loans. I must mention that at the beginning of these cycles, at the beginning of the trainings, they are trained on how to make a constitution, which then guides their activities throughout the 9-month or 12-month cycle. And everybody, none of them, even the leadership of that group, none of them is beyond the Constitution. The Constitution is what directs their activities. And even at the beginning of the cycle, they are able to choose their leaders. Usually there are 5 leaders. There is the chair lady, the record keeper or secretary if you want. Then there is the treasurer or the box keeper. And there are money counters who then are able to count money as the activities or as the savings are going on. Amongst them, they also choose 3 independent key keepers who then, during the beginning of every meeting, open the box. The box in a savings group is not necessarily a bank. It is an office where they keep their passbooks, where they keep their pens, where they keep their stamps and ink, where they are able to look organized, because then otherwise everybody would keep their passbooks. The VSL model is a very organized and structured activity. At the end of the 9-month or 12-month cycle, the members of the group are able to come together and see what they have earned, what they have saved during the year, and then they are able to see what interest or dividends they have earned. So each member earns dividends according to the number of their shares. This occasions an opportunity for them to have money, to have lump sum money. Throughout the year, they have been taking loans in piecemeals. But at the end of the year, they are able to go home with a lump sum amount of money. The dividends range from 10,000 shillings, which is like 100 Canadian dollars, up to 100,000 Kenya shillings, which is like 1,000 Canadian dollars. The lump sum amounts are able to make the members develop their homes. They are able to take up larger projects, larger than what they have been doing with the loans they've been taking throughout the year. So some of the examples of projects they undertake with the lump sum amounts includes roofing their houses. It includes paying for school fees for their children. It includes even paying dowry. You know, in Kenya we have cultural events where dowry is paid. It includes expanding their businesses. It also includes buying livestock so that they can speculate for sale later. And so the impact that the Women Empowerment Program, otherwise known as the VSL program, has made is immense. People have come from depending on their husbands, depending on their loved ones, to a place where they are able to even help their loved ones. They have come from a place of purchasing 50 shillings worth of a share to a place of purchasing 200 shillings worth of a share. One of the unexpected gains of this project is the respect that women earn in their own households and even in the community. They are now able to partake of decision making at the household level and even at the community level. And their husbands are able to respect them even more now that they are seeing them as fellow helpers in terms of taking care of the needs of their household. The Women Empowerment Project has, over the years, had immense impact, not only in households, but also communities. The over 46,000 women have an asset base of over 120 million. The women have become a bank unto themselves. And for us, the plan is to de-risk them so that now they can become bankable, so that they move from a place of just saving 5 shares to a place where then they can access higher loans from banking institutions. We have seen people who have expanded their businesses. We have also seen people who have started businesses with the lump sum and the loans from these projects. There is the case of this young woman who became a member of a VSL group. And through the lump sum sharing at the end of the year, she was able to get enough money to buy a second-hand motorbike for her husband, who then engaged in a transport business And from that, it built a very strong bond in the family. And during the second year, they got a second motorbike, so that now they had one they would rent out for transport and one that the husband would use to increase household income for the family. Over the years, they have become very good examples in the community. People who knew where this couple was several years ago marvel at how far they have come. They used to be very, very poor, but right now they have become models in the village with a very successful transport business using the motorbike. In Kenya, the motorbike transport business, otherwise known as boda boda, is very popular. And so it is one of the ways people can better their economic situations. And so this couple has become a role model in their village as a result of being part of a village savings and loans association. I would like to say this. The village savings and loans associations attract women more than men. But when men see success in other men through these groups, then it attracts men to these groups. Over the years, for very long, for more than 10 years, we only had 10% membership for men. But currently we are at 34% membership from men, meaning that it is beginning to attract the men folk in our communities where we are working. And for us, that is success, because to convince men to join such groups is an uphill task. But the fact that the women have become successful enough to attract the attention of men, that for us is a good story. It is a good story. And at least we are able to get a breakthrough to men now, not only with VSL activities, but also with our other projects, like the agricultural projects and the rest. In 2018, we did an impact assessment to see what happened to the groups that we started way back in 2010. And over 89% of those groups were still in existence. And they had replicated, they had multiplied, they had influenced other members of the community to form their groups. The Women Empowerment Project is one of the most sustainable activities we have ever implemented. It has changed the lives of women. It has made them more confident. It has strengthened them as pillars in the community. The impact we are having in the landscape that we are working could not have been possible without the partnership of Tearfund Canada and the support from MCIC. There's so much we have been able to do, and there's so much we can do even in coming years. There are many, many areas that we have not reached, even in the county that we are working. And so we envisage not only to have 46,000 women, but beyond that. The need is still great. And with their support, we can reach much more women in the landscape where we are working.
Thank you so much. It's really incredible to hear the stories of your community work in Kenya. And I want to thank you for sharing today, especially for those joining from a different time zone and everything like that. It's great to have you participating. I wonder if we could ask everyone to come back on for another discussion about community engagement. In your experience, what role does community engagement and support play in the success of gender equality initiatives? And how have you fostered that engagement? I think we heard a little bit in the last round, but I'd like to hear a little more. Let's go to Tearfund first. I think, Tricia, maybe we'll go to you.
Sure, thanks, Grace. It was really good to hear from Josephine. Community engagement at Fadhili is done through the local church. You heard her speak a little bit about that during the presentation, and even more specifically by involving local government units. When we try and enhance community ownership of the engagement process, there's actually a tool that's used called the Participatory Rural Appraisal. And this promotes the involvement of both men and women across all slices of the community. This is done so that we can ensure that inclusivity is always considered. The tools in this process, they're meant to bring down the stereotypes and any cultural bottlenecks that are associated with women in regards to development work. There's different training sessions that the community engages in, and there's a 21-day and later a 14-day training. Through this training, which is really heavily drawing on community resources, the roles of women are really, really brought out. One of the tools, for example, is a 24-hour calendar. And women take note of everything they do in a whole 24-hour cycle. And then this is shared with the whole community. It becomes really obvious what the productive and reproductive roles of women are. And these come out really clearly. And when the community sees this, they then see how women actually need to be supported. And that really fosters a lot of community involvement. Fadhili has also found a way of getting men to support women through part of their programming, which is called a positive masculinity program. This encourages men in particular to come alongside and to model positive attitudes towards their spouses and just women in general. I can't really overemphasize the role of gender responsiveness, and it has to be included in everything that we do, especially in meetings and trainings and that kind of thing. We always have to ask ourselves, what time do we arrange these things so that women are not taken away from their already really heavy household duties, and so that it doesn't represent, additional burden to them. So there's a lot of consultation that's involved in order to establish some of the routines. Women's voices need to be heard, valued, and acted on. And this has to be done in a way that's not intimidating towards men, because that would actually be a recipe for promoting gender-based violence. But in terms of securing the community support, we work specifically with local churches, and the local churches are encouraged to be agents of change within their communities. We set up transformational development committees within the church community, and these committees provide oversight to many of the activities that we do. Actually, many savings group members are actually mobilized by this work that we do with churches. Some of the members of the VSLs actually come from these committees. So there's quite a bit of overlap there to ensure that support is provided from the communities in the work that we do.
Thank you so much. Some really interesting points there about the participatory processes you're using and rooting things in, existing community structures like churches and community groups. That's really interesting. And of course, the piece you mentioned about how you include men in that process. I wonder if we could throw it to Real Humanitarian, if you guys had a response about the community engagement piece.
Sure, we can share that. Real Humanitarian has been very careful in all of the years that we come in. We have communities request that we come in and offer assistance, and we try and ask what is the problem, first of all, but then also ask them, how do you see this? What's the solution that you see would be most effective? And SSCM is probably a really good example of that. The Ethiopian NGO was created in response to a government request to meet a need, and that it evolved over time. Originally, it was just a place for street women and their children to stay, but that's not a sustainable or long-term solution. And it evolved into trades training so that the women would eventually have the ability to have their own income and provide their own housing and look after their own families. And so this is how that has evolved. When we came on the scene in about 2009, 2010, we came in originally as just helping to fund the program, but over time have become equal partners in this program as we look to the local community for solutions, and then we work together with them to build their capacity so they can actually meet those needs. And of course, financing is one of the ways that it is needed, the help is needed, but there's also the just the insight of what is being done in other places to help meet some of these needs as they look for them. So for instance, having social workers on site, which I mentioned was one of the sort of supports that we brought in to help women who are coming from many different backgrounds. This was a solution that they hadn't thought of because they hadn't seen it done locally, but we shared that it has been done in other places and been successful, and of course it's been successful there. So anytime that we look at a new term, all of the women who come and are enrolled in the process, they've come through a process of being referred by the local government. The local governments have bodies that know who are vulnerable, high risk within their geographical area. They make those referrals to the organization. They then do home visits. They visit the family, they talk to the community leaders, and as that process goes, of course, there's a short list that happens, and eventually people are admitted to coming in. The women themselves make a commitment that they're going to engage in this process. They're going to show up for the training. There's a commitment coming from all of those places. And the local community, of course, is involved in helping to try and support them as they can as well. So it is really a village helping these individuals that need to have this big change in their life. So it's very powerful when the whole community and all levels, all stakeholders are involved in helping to make this process work. Thank you.
Sounds like it, yeah. I mean, really encouraging to hear you guys share about how your projects are doing that, and sort of you spoke about how how the program evolved over time and how the solutions really came from the community, even as you brought in ideas that have worked from other communities to try. So really interesting. I want to know, UNICEF, if you wanted to share a little bit about some of the community engagement piece. Rhoda, maybe I'll pass it to you.
Yes, yes. So in Ghana, one thing that has been established is within the education space, you cannot take the community out if you expect to implement educational programs successfully. And so it's always very important that the community engagement is part of project implementation. When there was COVID-19 in Ghana, schools were closed for nearly a year and students had to stay home. Studies that were done show that many adolescent girls became pregnant at that time. And so when government announced that schools were going to reopen, UNICEF, in collaboration with the Girls Education Unit of Ghana Education Service, embarked on a back to school campaign. And the main intention for the back to school campaign was, how do we get some of these vulnerable girls, pregnant girls, or young mothers to return to school? Fortunately, at that same time, UNICEF had supported the Ministry of Education to develop guidelines on prevention of pregnancy among schoolgirls and facilitation of re-entry for young mothers into school after childbirth. So that document came in very handy for the back to school campaign. At the community level, traditional leaders, religious leaders, who on a normal day will go against anything that has to do with pregnancy and schooling, were engaged to understand the need to give these girls a second chance to education. And I must say that the back to school campaign was very successful in the sense that these girls were welcomed to school by their teachers because their teachers had also been engaged as part of the back to school campaign. At the community level, the traditional leaders, the parents, and the caregivers, because they were also engaged, were willing to support these girls to be able to return to school. And I like to quote what one young mother said after returning to school because of this back to school campaign. She's called Ernestina, and this is what she says, and I quote, "Without the back to school campaign, I may have never returned to school after childbirth. I am happy to have received the support from my parents and my teachers to help my return to school after childbirth. I am back on course to becoming a nurse." Unquote. So this is what Ernestina says. And just think about it. If this back to school campaign had not happened, where will Ernestina be now? Now, Ernestina has completed lower secondary school and has transitioned to senior high school or senior secondary. And the parents are helping to take care of the baby. The community is also supporting and not giving her names or abusing her. And so community engagement is very important and plays a very critical role when it comes to education for girls.
So much. It's a good reminder that all of these projects help so many people, but it's the individual stories, that of lives being changed that really stay with us, I think. And it sounds like you really took a comprehensive approach involving, traditional leaders, the government, communities. So thank you for sharing about that. We can take some lessons from everything you all have shared today. I think now I'd like to move on to our final award winner, which is the project you've just been sharing about, Rhoda. So, and from UNICEF Canada, we have Samantha Ash, who you've heard a little bit from today, the Deputy Director of International Programs at UNICEF Canada, and Rhoda Enschel, the Education Officer at UNICEF Canada. We're going to share about their important partnership to improve girls' education in Ghana, as you just heard. And we'll pass it to you, Samantha. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Grace. And yes, hi everyone. Absolutely thrilled to be here today with Rhoda to talk to you a bit more about our project, Undaunted Ghana. You've been hearing a lot from Rhoda and have a better idea of the project, but I want to take you back a bit to when the project began and why we focused on adolescent girls and their education. So the last 25 years has seen a steady rise in girls' access to education around the world. And with that rise, we've seen communities and entire countries transform. This is because girls who receive an education are less likely to marry young and more likely to lead healthy, productive lives. They earn higher incomes, participate in decisions that affect them, build better futures for themselves and their families. But despite this steady rise, there continues to be barriers that push girls further from the classroom. And some of these obstacles are visible, like the long distances students must travel to school, the lack of proper school facilities, including hygiene facilities or wash facilities, or financial pressures on families. But then there are other barriers that are more subtle, yet equally devastating: deep-rooted gender norms, early marriage, and the quiet but powerful message that education is not for everyone. Now, for girls in Ghana, pregnancy is one of the big leading reasons they leave school. And the pressures of motherhood combined with stigma and lack of support have created some of these more subtle barriers that few can overcome. So when the Undaunted project began in 2018-2019 school year, there were about over 7,000 students who became pregnant in that year. And for a third of them, 33%, childbirth marked the end of their education. And this was not because they lacked ambition, but because they lacked support. And then came the pandemic, which further amplified these challenges. In 2020, and Rhoda's already touched upon this, there was a 10-month school closure that affected 9.2 million students in Ghana. Now, for some, it was just a pause, but for others, especially girls, it was the end of their education. When schools finally reopened, many didn't return. And so this was the situation when Undaunted Ghana began and through the first year of the project. When we launched Undaunted, we knew we had to tackle the barriers that prevented adolescent girls from staying in school, but also the challenges that girls face in studying math and sciences, fields that could open doors to greater opportunities, but remained out of reach for too many. In the 2016-2017 academic year, for example, and that was the data we're using when we began, only 4 out of 10 girls were studying these subjects. So these are numbers we wanted to change. So our objectives when we began the project were clear. First, it was to create safe and inclusive learning environments for adolescent girls. And these environments were just about physical safety. They were spaces where girls felt empowered, supported, and confident to pursue their education without fear of judgment or exclusion. Our second objective was that we aim to encourage and support girls in science and math education, fields they've often been overlooked in. And this goes for girls and women around the world. Now, the importance of STEM education was not just taught in the classroom, but reinforced throughout the community, as Rhoda's talked about, ensuring that everyone, from parents to teachers to community leaders, understood its value for girls' futures. And third, we sought to address the critical barriers that kept girls from attending and completing junior high school, whether these were financial hardships, societal pressures, or early marriage. Our goal really was not just to keep girls in school, it was to make education something that felt achievable despite any challenges an individual was facing. So UNICEF Ghana selected 5 districts listed here on the slide with the highest dropout rates and the greatest incidence of early marriage and pregnancy. This was an intentional choice, as we knew these areas needed to be the most support to change the narrative and give girls the chance to succeed. We also knew that to make a lasting impact, we needed a whole school approach that engaged the entire community and was co-created with a range of stakeholders that Rhoda's talked about. So this is how we could impact lasting change with MCIC and other partners standing alongside us. Rhoda has talked about some of our key lessons learned and outcomes in the panel, but I want to just highlight some of the amazing results that were achieved through our partnership. We set out to reach as many adolescents as possible, and we're proud to say that over 29,000 young people were directly impacted by the UNdaunted program. These are not just numbers. They represent students who are now empowered to continue their education despite the odds stacked against them. On the way, one of the ways that we helped empower these adolescents was by opening doors to STEM education. So girls were given the tools and encouragement to see themselves as future scientists, engineers, and leaders. And by fostering their interest and helping them strengthen these skills, we created pathways for girls to access more opportunities. We also made sure to introduce them to role models in STEM, women who are excelling in science and math and engineering and technology fields, and showing the girls that they too could reach these heights. Now, to support this push for STEM, we distributed over 5,000 science and math and learning materials to 182 junior high schools. These resources were important because they didn't just equip students. They equip teachers, empowering them to deliver quality education in subjects that are key to breaking the cycle of limited opportunities. Enough from me about this. Let's watch a short video from the team in Ghana and some of the adolescent girls who were part of the program.
In 2018, UNICEF, with funding support from Canada, rolled out the gender-responsive pedagogy to address challenges that impede girls' participation in science and mathematics programming.
Riddle, riddle. Riddle. I am a set which contains all the elements of other set. For now, the girls are more active, participatory when it comes to teaching and learning of mathematics, unlike the previous days.
We built the capacity of teachers to be able to use locally available materials to teach science concepts and then mathematics.
This program has really helped us. Now it's not only the theory maths we are learning in this school, we are also doing practicals too.
This has gone a long way to improving BEC pass rate in the 3 regions that it was rolled out and the 5 districts that the program was implemented in. After 4 years today, we're able to observe that teachers are still using the knowledge that they gained 4 years back to still engage learners in participatory learning programming, and it has been very fruitful.
For every girl, every right.
We knew that the journey didn't stop at the classroom door, which is why we also trained 2,270 upper primary school teachers to help their students transition smoothly to junior high school. And this training equipped them to support students, particularly girls who might otherwise fall through the cracks due to barriers like early marriage or pregnancy. The teachers were prepared to identify at-risk students and provide them with the support they needed. And we didn't just focus on academics. Teachers are also trained to support the holistic needs of students, which is often overlooked in many educational systems. One of the most important lessons taught was about menstrual hygiene management, ensuring that girls had the knowledge and resources to manage their health and continue their education without interruption. And to ensure this support was sustained, we established 56 district teacher support teams. And these teams were trained to offer continuous guidance to teachers, ensuring they had the resources and confidence to address the challenges in their classroom, whether they were educational or personal. And these teams played an integral role in keeping education systems resilient, especially in the face of the challenges like the COVID-19 pandemic, which was really impacting for all students. This wasn't just about girls. As you remember when I said when we began, it was about, we took a whole school approach. It was about transforming entire communities. So boys too were engaged in addressing the issues of early marriage and challenging societal norms. Messages like one you can see here on this t-shirt were crucial because gender equality starts with changing mindsets across the board, boys, families, and communities. In places like West Ganja, this led to dramatic shifts where we saw fewer girls marrying young and more children, regardless of gender, attending school. Finally, as we've mentioned, we knew that sustainability and accountability had to take a community-driven approach and engage a wide range of community members that Rhoda has touched upon. So just reiterating that we reached Over 15,000 community members spreading the message that education is the key to a brighter future for everyone. Again, that back to school campaign was really crucial to the program's success. Part of this community engagement also included supporting young mothers who thought their education was over. Through sessions hosted by UNICEF Ghana, these young mothers received guidance and resources to continue their education and care for their children, including support to help them re-enter school or vocational training, proving that motherhood does not mark the end of education, but the beginning of new opportunities. So thank you for learning more about Undaunted Ghana.
Wow. So yeah, it's great like to hear how so many girls like lives were affected by this project. Let's turn now to our last discussion question. What measures do you take to ensure the sustainability and long-term impact of your projects focused on empowering women and girls? Rhoda, can we hear from UNICEF first on this, please?
Yes. So I must say that the co-creation activity that was implemented right from the beginning of the project implementation has really supported in terms of sustaining the gains of this project. At the Ghana education level, now they have owned all the gains, for instance, with the teacher training in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics initiative. All the teacher training content has now been adapted for use and for scale up in other districts. For UNICEF as an organization, we have also taken on board a lot of the lessons, which is now helping us in terms of developing and designing new programs that are targeting adolescent girls in school. I must also say that we are happy to inform everyone that the foundation that was built by the Undaunted Women Supporter Program has also been scaled up to 9 additional districts, which are supported by Hapag-Lloyd through the German national committees. And we are very excited that all the gains of the program is being heard, not just within Ghana, but outside the shores of Ghana, and other investments are coming in from other donors to take this up to scale. Lastly, I would also like to mention that towards the end of the project implementation, we had the Undaunted Women pay a visit to Ghana to travel up north. They left the comfort of their country, their homes, to visit the project district. And that really empowered the Ghana education staff at the subnational level, engaging with the girls, engaging with the community level. It really showed them that this Undaunted Women supporter program is an important one, not just to the donors, to the government, and so they need to become strong advocates for scaling this up. So these are some of the areas or things that has been done to ensure that the gains of this program is being sustained.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, like sharing, like with, like to be ambassadors, like participant to be ambassadors. One of the, I think, yeah, great measures or things like can make it like the project more sustainable, and this can show like the long-term impact of the project. Now, can we hear from Tearfund on this, please?
Sure. Thanks, Abdal. It's really wonderful to hear from UNICEF. What an inspirational project. I've really loved hearing about how you're impacting not only just the girls, but also the community around them. So inspiring. I had a lot of hearts to give in my comments. With regard to our project and how we focus on long-term impact and sustainability as we're empowering women and girls, it's really important in our view that you hook these activities as much as possible into government structures, whatever that might look like. In Kenya, we do this often through the use of community elders and others that work within the government structures. And that really helps with that ownership piece, and it helps with sustainability. as I mentioned earlier, Tearfund only works through local organizations. And so that localization agenda is very front and center in our programming. We try to ensure that there's local ownership of the projects right from the very beginning. We want to be sure that we're avoiding any kind of dependence on us as an organization. One of the ways that we do that is we're sure that in the projects that we run, we're not looking at having massive inputs, an importation of skills, an importation of materials. And so generally we have very minimal capital injection. We like to refer to this as a hand up rather than a hand out that leads to dependency and leads to an ideology that maybe the resources don't actually exist yet within the community. And yet our experience is that resources are abundant within the community, but there have been kind of things that have prevented those resources from being utilized. So there's that empowerment that needs to happen rather than material or financial injection. We also use village agents who are actually residents in the villages. And sometimes we build things like helping them with their transportation or providing them with some support with airtime or mobile phone access into the groups. And this really helps them to come alongside in a sustainable way. It ensures that continuity of replication just beyond just the project cycle. We want to be sure that everything that we do can carry on even if the local organization moves on to a different geography or moves on to a different focus area. Whatever we do has to be replicable. I spoke earlier also about the overlay that we have, not only with government, but with other local organizations like churches, for example. Churches have existed in most of these communities where we work for decades, and they're expected that they're going to continue to operate in the communities. These are very well resourced in terms of their social capital, in terms of their ability to bring people together and to mobilize volunteers. And so we see that our work through local churches and other community organizations that already exist and that will continue to exist, we see that as contributing to sustainability as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tricia, for sharing this inspiring implementation model for your project. Now, can we hear from Real Humanitarian for this one?
It's always an interesting question when you're designing a program or trying to figure out what you should do. How will this have the best impact? How can we make this long lasting? How can we make sure the program works? One of the first things, as we mentioned, we always do is we work with local partners, people who really have an understanding on the ground of what the needs truly are and how can we fill those needs in a way that is practical and culturally relevant and that will actually work where we are trying to have an impact. Because we're a small, medium-sized organization, we're not able to grow to scale in the same way that other organizations can sometimes, but we focus instead on having a narrow and deep impact that whatever, even if it's not a huge population, the impact that we're having is a deep, long-term, long-lasting impact that takes a full transformation of where beneficiaries, where participants are before the program to where they are afterwards. And because we're small, that's something that we can really focus on as an organization, and especially with our really integral partnership with our local teams, our local partners, that we can really see that happening. And one of the things we've learned as a small organization as well is that when we're developing a program or developing a project term, that we really must take into account how long it takes for that to be self-sustaining, that we're not pulling out too soon, which is sometimes tempting when there's limited funding or limited staff, that you get it started and then you let them go. But maybe they're not ready. Maybe we're not ready. Maybe the students aren't ready. And so that we maintain that support and those wraparound supports, those helps not only for the students but for the program, so that we're not leaving things at a point where they're still not ready to stand on their own. So I think for us, those are kind of our learnings of how to really have a long-term impact and have that lasting sustainability of programs.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And thank you all for your insights. So let's start with this one for UNICEF. What challenges have you encountered in ensuring that girls stay in school? And what strategies have been most effective in overcoming these obstacles?
So from the Ghana side, during the co-creation workshop, we realized that there are different challenges that affects girls staying in school, completing their lower secondary, and transitioning to higher secondary. And some of those critical issues that were dialogued included school supplies. And if I talk about school supplies, I'm talking about school bags, school uniforms, stationery, and even sanitary pad. And it will interest you to know that for some girls, they would lose school, they will miss school and contact hours during their menstrual cycle because of lack of access to sanitary pads. And these are some of the critical issues that affect that adolescent girl living in that deprived community on a monthly basis. And if you do the calculation for how many days a girl is missing out on school in a month, multiply by the academic year, I'm sure your guess is good as mine that this girl will be losing out a lot. But fortunately for us in this Undaunted Women supported program, there came in the global program to end child marriage, where there was a bursary support component to supply school items to girls, including stationery, including sanitary pad, including PPEs during the COVID-19. And so very vulnerable girls coming from very deprived homes were identified, about 1,000 of them in all the 5 project districts. And these girls were supported with these supplies. And that went a long way to help all the 1,000 girls to stay in school right from junior high school 1 to junior high school 3. And 97% of those girls transition to higher secondary schools, with the remaining of them also going into vocational education. So that tells you that, yes, these are the challenges, some of the challenges that confront the girls. But once the help or the support comes in, it helps them to stay in school. They focus on their learning, are able to complete and transition to higher levels of education. And that is why for us at UNICEF, we will continue to engage. We will continue to engage with all stakeholders to come on board, because if you look at the data, even on the guidelines on pregnancy and schooling, so far we've been able to reach 700,000 Ghanaians out of the 34 million Ghanaians, which tells us that we still have more to do as Ghana. And so how do we do it? We need all stakeholders, we need our partners to come on board so that, like that girl I spoke about, Ernestina, we have so many of them still at home because of stigma, because of fear, because of lack of parental support. And we need all partners to come on board to help many of such Ernestinas to come back to school, to be in school, and to help us break the poverty cycle and to contribute to Ghana's development.
Thank you so much, Rhoda. Very detailed answer, and I hope these tips for successes can be shared with the audience and with our other member agency as well. Yeah, for Tearfund, what impact has financial literacy training had on women's decision making and household income?
when we have the trainings, especially the financial literacy training for the women, they become empowered and start earning an income. And as a result, they earn a place in the decision-making table in the households. And not just in the households, but also in the community. They start getting noticed. If before, for example, they were stay-at-home mothers, which is a good thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now they start getting out because they have a business they are running, or they have started a kindergarten as a business, and so they start getting noticed in the community, and they are able to get leadership roles even at the community level. The financial literacy training also opens their eyes to opportunities around them. Formerly, before joining the groups, their vision is as short as where they are at home. But once they get out and join the groups, they're able to share ideas. And so their eyes are opened to opportunities around them. And the men also, in their lives, get to understand that their spouses have a source of income. And as a result, they become a partner, a useful partner, even at the household level. The women's potential also comes out alive, and they are able to do much more than they ever expected. And this brings even the question of them knowing how to prioritize in the family and prioritizing for the children, for food, for, other operating expenses in the family. And they no longer beg for household basics. And that's an empowering thing. Not always depending on your spouse for salt, for even a matchbox. It is very, very empowering for a woman. And so this and much more. And even men notice that often they want to come in to support now that they see they have a partner who understands their financial issues. Gender-based violence in rural communities is very common. And sometimes it is associated with earnings, with income, who brings, income in the household. And so through our program, the women become independent, sort of, and in the process, even gender-based violence is lowered because now their usefulness is noticed by their spouses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josephine. We have another question for Tearfund. The demand, for your generous program support must be immense. What criteria or what method do you use to identify potential participants?
We usually join, when we are making a community entry, we use the churches and the chiefs, like village leaders. And so they call a meeting for the villagers, and we are able to explain what it is we are coming to do. And mostly it starts with the participatory rural appraisal, so that we are not bringing something that is not needed in the community. So after the exercise, which takes about 21 days, then we are able to prioritize and realize this community, what they need, maybe it's not women empowerment, maybe they need agricultural knowledge. So through that prioritization, we are able to see where to start amongst the things that we do. And so recruitment is through those public gatherings, and we tell them to self-select. And when they get to 18, usually we say 18, when they get to a minimum of 18, this is the number to call. We give numbers for our field officers. And through, let's say within a week or two, they're already making calls. And they're saying, we are ready for the rollout of the program. And so our field officers are able to engage. And so that is how we make our community entry. First and foremost, through PRA, that is participatory rural appraisal, so that we know exactly where to enter. Is it with the VSL project? Is it with whichever other project? And then after that, we roll out our program once they invite us. Yes, thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Josephine. We have a question for Real Humanitarian. How has the local community responded to your program, and what role have they played in its success?
Because the trade school has been there for quite a while, the local community is quite aware of the school, and it's very well supported by local leadership and local areas. We are actually, a number of years ago, the local government, in seeing the value of the school, granted the leasehold of the land to the organization for free, so that they were able to operate the program without the cost of having to pay rent for the building and the land. And this has been a major piece of success in being able to operate the school, as it really cuts down on some of the expenses. We're able to really focus on providing the program and the materials for the students, and not have to worry about changing rents or leasehold agreements. So the community is very supportive, especially the local government in the area is very supportive of the school. The support of it has actually grown. So the capital city, Addis Ababa, is broken down into regions and then sub-regions and then little communities, and they all have communication with each other. And the support for the school and the referrals for the school have grown to larger portions of the city, where it's not just the very, very local level that is referring to students to the school, but they're coming from farther away in the city and able to access that. And so we know that the success of the students and the success of the program has reached more ears, as we're receiving more referrals from different areas of the city to be able to come towards that. So it is actually quite impactful for us that the community is supportive, because it really helps us be able to reach more people, and also to maintain the program with that government support of being able to have the space for free.
Thank you, Rachel, for this answer. And yeah, I echo what you said. The community support and the government, I think one of the maybe success elements in your project. I have a question for all of you. So whoever would like to share with us any remarkable success stories from your project that really stay with you. So, and this is for all of you, or whoever would like to step in and answer this question or share with us some success stories.
Thanks, Abdel. I don't mind jumping in. Again, Trisha from Tearfund. One of the favorite stories, of course, I've heard many, many stories, and I just came back from Kenya. I was there visiting some of our participants and working with Josephine in Fadhili Trust in Kenya as well. And it's always so amazing to hear from the individuals. We've heard stories about individuals in this presentation as well. And I think that's really inspiring and motivating to all of us on this call. One of my favorite stories is the case of Lynette Matthew. And she's part of a village savings and loan group called Wendo wa Kasia. She joined this group in 2019, and she began to learn about financial literacy as part of the program. There's a 9 to 12 month training program. And as she increased her financial literacy, she began to think about different things that she might want to do if she was able to access some funds of her own. She created a little plan, and she developed this goal of buying a water tank for fresh water supply in her village. There were boreholes in her village, but they were very, very salty, and water wasn't really usable from these boreholes. The villagers had to walk a very long distance in search of fresh water so that they could drink and cook. And obviously, she began to put two and two together. Where there's a need, she might be able to create a business plan to fill that need. Well, thanks to the VSL group supported by this Women's Empowerment Project, she was able to take a loan, and with the payout at the end of her first cycle, she got enough money to buy a 5,000 liter water tank. It cost her just over $350, so it was quite an investment. but she would buy water from a water truck that came around, and that would cost her about $27. But then she would sell a jerry can. So a jerry can is a 20-liter plastic container, and she was able to sell that at about 20 cents Canadian per jerry can. So this was almost 100% profit for her. And so over time, she was able to grow and grow and grow. And again, through investing in her Village Savings and Loan Association group and benefiting from the interest at the payout, she was able not only to use this income that was able to provide water for her own family and household needs, but she expanded this even to include the water for use in her own kitchen garden. And this kitchen garden supplied her household with a variety of vegetables. And we know that dietary diversity is really, really key on so many different indicators. But she was able to have enough vegetables, not only for her household, but also selling the surplus in the village market. So you're kind of getting a picture for how this is growing and growing and growing. So at the beginning, she would just be able to get about 2 trucks per week, but the demand was huge. And as people got this high quality water, they wanted more and more. And the amount that she had through the initial water tank that she purchased wasn't enough. So using again the money that she had through the Village Savings and Loan Association, she bought a second 3,000-liter tank to increase her supply. And you can imagine that just in 2019, she was kind of nervously starting on this project. And now she's a renowned water and vegetable supplier in her whole village. And just to think, like, had she not joined this Women's Empowerment Village Savings and Loan Association group, she may never have found this opportunity to grow into this really serious businesswoman like she has. That's one of my favorite stories.
Great. Thank you so much, Tricia. Very inspiring. Anyone would like to share?
Yes, I'd like to share from the Ghana side. So in terms of what is staying with us as the UNICEF Ghana family, I'll take it at 3 different levels. I'll take it at policy level, system, and practice levels. At the policy level, the gains that have been chalked through this program has now been adapted by the government, by the Ghana Education Service, in terms of looking at even teacher training that are more intentional, responding to the specific needs of girls. And so now when trainings in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics programs are happening, we don't just look at the content, but we look at how teachers are equipped with teaching methods that help them to respond to the diverse needs of girls, so that at the end of the day, their interest in these male-dominated subjects are also boosted, and they transition to higher levels of education to pursue these programs. So that is something at the policy level I would say is happening. Again, on the guidelines on pregnancy and schooling, now that is the government policy direction to all schools that on no account should any girl who is pregnant or a young mother be denied their access to education, or their right to education should be denied because they are pregnant or a young mother. And I think that's one positive thing. At the system level, a lot of teachers have been trained in terms of how do they, even within a low resource context, use local materials to improvise teaching and learning materials. I think we saw that in the video that was shared by Samantha, where kids are using items like maize, like gari, like rice in the classroom to learn in a very practical way in a science class. And this is something that has come to stay. It's not going away. Teachers are using it in their continuous professional development. And one thing which is also unique about that teacher training is the fact that all the facilitators have set up WhatsApp groups with all the teachers. So as and when teachers need support from the facilitators, they get real-time support on the WhatsApp platform to provide continuous support for the teachers. And like the story I shared about Ernestina, now pregnant girls, young mothers are having a second chance to go back to school. So we are happy and we appreciate all the support from the Undaunted women through our Canada national committees in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhoda, for sharing like this about like the policy. We have our like last success story from Rachel.
Thank you. Yes, I have one story that stands out to me as one of the students. She was in the program prior to when we won the MCIC grant, but she went through the same program. Her name is Bazaihu, and she was a young girl who had not been able to finish school. She went through and took the hairdressing certification and was able to get work as a hairdresser. And she worked really, really hard. She was able to save up enough money that she was able to go back to school, upgrade her schooling, get further education, and move on with her career from that base of being able to improve her income through trades training. She was able to really transform her future and her career path. She went into teaching, learned about schools and school management, and she now is a principal of a kindergarten school that has, in Ethiopia, they do 3 levels of kindergarten. So kindergarten 1, 2, and 3. And there's about 300 students in her school. And she is so proud when we go back and visit. She's invited us a couple of times to come and see her school and see how the children are doing and how much she values education and how she wants all these students to be able to finish their education. And it is a beautiful school. She actually advocated with her local government to build a new campus because the campus she originally started with was very old and had maintenance problems, quite severe maintenance problems. And so this new school is now there. We've been able to see it. It's a beautiful new campus, and she's so proud of her school, of her students, and she's able to fully support herself and her family. She's married, she has children, and her children will be able to access education without the need of outside supports. And so for me, that's one of those like full transformation type of stories where she went from living in a kitchen, someone else's kitchen that she was renting out, to being able to work for herself, to being able to see a career path and now have a home and have a job and have her family. So I think that's one of my favorite stories.
Thank you so much.
So thank you everyone for joining us for these incredible stories of change that are happening around the world, making lives better for women and children.